Hi, and welcome to this episode of Brainy Moms, brought to you today by Learning RX Brain Training Centers. I'm your host, Dr. Amy Moore, here with my co-host, Terry Miller, coming to you as usual from Colorado Springs, Colorado. We're excited to bring you a conversation with our guest today, coming all the way from South Florida, Stacie Boyar. Stacie is a licensed mental health counselor who specializes in anxiety, depression, and PTSD. She's the author of the book, You're Not the Boss of Me, about tips for conquering anxiety. And she's also the host of a really cool podcast called Namastacie.
I love that name, Namastacie.
I
That
do
is
too.
just so super fun. So Stacie, I'm just super glad to have you here and want to dig into all the incredible information you have about anxiety, which is so relevant right now, so needed. But before that, if you could just give us a little bit of your background and what brought you to where you are today.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me today. Yes, as you said, I'm a licensed mental health counselor. I began as a teacher years and years ago. And when my younger daughter went to school for the first time, kindergarten, I thought, oh, let me go back to school as well and do what I really wanted to do. And that's when I decided to get my degree in mental health counseling. And I had a private practice in South Florida, as you mentioned. But then, of course, when COVID hit, everything went via telehealth. So I'm exclusively providing telehealth for my clients. And yes, I went ahead and wrote a book during this crazy COVID time, and it's sort of associated with my podcast, which gives tips how to deal with anxiety.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, what a coincidence. I was a teacher before I was a psychologist. So yeah, and I kind of did the exact same thing. Just said, there's something going on that we're missing here, and I got to figure out what that is. And
yes.
So,
yeah, absolutely. And I mean, honestly, I wish that schools, even starting in elementary school, would teach these kinds of things to help with anxiety. And this way kids would have the tools to deal with things that happen to them and what they can do. And unfortunately, it's not really taught in schools.
No. And in fact, it's not taught in teacher education programs either, unless you're going into special ed, right? And so the traditional mainstream classroom teacher has very little training in psychology and in how to help children co-regulate their emotions. And so it's so needed. Absolutely. So
I feel like this topic, even, I think like with my older kids, that this wasn't a topic that was even discussed. So my oldest kids are like 28, 27, 25. And that wasn't something when they were in school that we talked about, that was brought up, that anxiety wasn't this worry just for your regular kid, just like you're talking about, Amy. That was more of like a really special issue, a kid with really big problems. And now it's something that we hear about, we're seeing more. Are we more aware? Is it more of a problem? Talk to us about, why are we seeing so much more anxiety right now, Stacie?
You know, I think if one good thing maybe came out of COVID is maybe it destigmatized anxiety a little bit, because everybody was experiencing it. And that's sort of where this whole idea came from, to write the book and to start the podcast, because kids were expressing such anxiety. And in my case in particular, my daughter was going to sleepaway camp and everything was shut down, but they were able to keep the sleepaway camp up and running. But they had to stay with their group of 10 kids the whole time. And during that time, my daughter sort of played this podcast to her friends, because they were saying, wow, what's like our future gonna look like, and what's going on? And this is, at first it was fun to stay in your pajamas and go to school, but you know what, this is like, ugh. So they started listening to the podcast, and I decided, well, let's write a book about this and teach kids how to deal with what they're going through, and how to do the deep breathing, how to do the grounding. But I do think that because some famous people have come out, Prince Harry's come out, saying that he has anxiety, maybe all of these people coming forward and talking about it more sort of destigmatizes it and makes it okay to talk about and get help for.
Okay. Absolutely. So speaking of getting help, talk to us a little bit about what parents should be on the lookout for. Like, what are some red flags that can help parents differentiate between, is my child experiencing anxiety, or is this just the stress and worry that's typical of this stage of life?
Yeah, well, I think if they're seeing excess irritability, excessive fatigue, excessive not motivated to do anything, sleep disturbances, muscle tension, not wanting to do the things that they used to do, not wanting to see friends. And I would even venture to say an obsession with social media too, because yes, there are some good things with social media, but getting wrapped into that and living vicariously through others is really serious too. But the main ones are the fatigue, the not engaging with friends and family, irritability, sleep disturbance, not doing things that they once loved, maybe doing poorly in school. Those kind of would be red flags. Of course, the suicidal ideation would be an extreme red flag, but a change in behavior from what they once were would be something to look into.
Sure.
I mean, obviously you'd want to, I'm imagining that you would recommend, gosh, I mean, get professional help. But I think in just that immediate, in that interim, when you see your kids starting to go down this path, starting to show these signs of anxiety, is it better to kind of push your kid? Like, no, you need to get out of bed. I know you feel bad, but you need to get out of bed. You're going to go to baseball practice or whatever it is, you're going to go to this class. You need to go get some sunshine. Is it better to push your kid or just to kind of back off and say, it's okay, I'm here for you, but you do what you need to do? What's the immediate response?
Well, I guess, talking about depression too, and sometimes they do go hand in hand. So I do always encourage with my clients to get up and do something, whether it's a walk around the block, whether it's just going in the backyard. But when you're so deep in a depression, as you guys know, it's so hard to even get out of bed. It's hard to brush your teeth. It's really hard to do anything. But yes, encouraging all those things. Are you drinking enough water? The basics. Are you eating the fruits and vegetables, not, dieting, but are you doing all those things that you need to be doing? Are you sleeping on a regular schedule? Are you following a routine? And as hard as it is, are you reaching out to those friends? Because of course, we're all humans. And even if we are introverted, we're social beings. So reaching out to people is such an important thing to do.
So talk a little bit about what parents can do in the middle of an anxiety episode, right? Like how can they help when it clearly I can't speak today.
Okay.
What can parents do right when this is happening, right? Where the child is experiencing either a panic attack or an anxiety attack or just a heightened level of anxiety. Talk to us about some strategies that parents can use to help calm their kids.
Yeah.
Well, the deep breathing, number one. And of course, that's something that needs to be practiced when you're not anxious. So when you are anxious, you can easily draw upon it. And, we've all heard them, but they are so important, whether it's the square breathing up for 4 and across for 4 and down, or the triangle breathing, whatever works for your child. Or if it's just really teaching them to breathe through your nose, get that air all the way in your stomach, puff your stomach out, breathe slowly out, slower out than you did in. Okay, let's do it again. But now when the air's in your stomach, may say something kind, say a mantra, say something that's going to make you feel good, then breathe out. So the deep breathing is number one. Of course, grounding is extremely important. Using your 5 senses to get yourself back in the moment, because of course, when we're anxious, we're thinking of the future and the what ifs and the what ifs and the what ifs. And when we are depressed, maybe we're thinking of the past. So ideally, you want to be in the present. So using your eyes, maybe to see 5 things right in front of you. What are 4 things you hear? What are 3 things you smell? What are 2 things you want to taste? What's 1 thing you can touch? Just to pull yourself back into the present. So I think those 2 are like most important in the thick of when you're in the moment.
So I'm thinking that parents are saying, okay, that's a great idea. How do I actually implement that? Do I say to my child, look at me, stop, close your eyes, sit? I mean, what would be their first step before they walk them through a breathing exercise or a grounding exercise?
Yeah, that is so good because Amy, that's exactly what I was thinking. I was thinking of my youngest that has these kind of meltdowns. And in the moment, there ain't no getting through to her. It
Yeah.
is. And
Well,
I
sure, they're in the
know
middle of an amygdala hijack,
Uh-huh.
and that's why Stacie is saying it's important to practice these techniques when they're
Right.
calm, so that then they can access those. But
Yeah.
you got to start somewhere, right?
Yeah.
Parents have to start somewhere. And so, what is that? Is that important for them to be looking at you, or sitting, or laying down, or like? Just talk us through that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and and I think every kid and every child and every person is different in what's going to work. There have been so many studies now that not that you have that on hand, but an ice pack or putting ice on that vagus nerve or behind their neck, something is splashing water on your face. But I love the idea of sitting with them, touching them somewhere on their knee, putting your arm around them. Okay, let's do this together. Let's take a deep breath. But of course, when a young child's in the midst of this, it is hard. It's really hard.
Yeah. Those are good things. So try to reach out, try to, cool water. Even I'm thinking like a cold cloth behind her neck, maybe, like in a soothing way. Those are good ideas.
Right. That ice mask, that covers the eyes and the tops of your cheeks, creates that mammalian diving reflex, right? Where it immediately lowers heart rate and blood pressure. And
Whoa, I didn't know that.
Yeah, that's why they say splash your face with cold water, or dunk your face into a ice bowl.
Nice.
Okay. And I have to say, I've read this so many times and I've said this to clients too, but I did want to practice it myself. So and of course, I'm just thinking of yoga, and yoga is a great thing for even young children and adults to get into because it adds the breathing. But I recently did a yoga class where they give you frozen washcloths. They must wet them and put them in the refrigerator and they're frozen. And so when it was done, I was like, you know what, I'm going to lay this on my chest. And honestly, it worked. I felt such like a rush of relaxation, just kind of laying it there. So, that might be something to try. My dog is barking. I am so sorry. I apologize. Let me just.
Yeah, so I really like that idea. I mean, and plus we know that anytime you can shock a sense, right, that's going to ground you, whether those reflexes are engaged or not, right? It's just the mere fact that you have shifted your focus from what you're feeling anxious about to that sensation, right? Whether you're holding an ice cube or walking barefoot in the snow, not that you can do that in Florida, but we can do that here, right? Just step onto your patio.
Yeah. 9 months out of the year.
Love that. And, if they are in a state where you could communicate them, asking them, what is your fear? What are the chances that this is really going to happen? If that does happen, is it really that bad? Let's think of something that's 180 degrees the opposite. What's something good that we can think about? Kind of questioning your own thoughts. But of course, when they're in the midst of it, that's hard. But once they're calmed down, maybe kind of talk them through it in a different way.
Okay. Yeah, helping them look for evidence for that thought, right? Putting that thought on trial.
Okay.
Yeah.
Tell me about why teen girls? Why has that been a focus that's really important to you? And is the focus of your book that's called You're Not the Boss of Me? Why that focus?
Well, to be honest, it didn't start out that way. But again, getting back to my daughter in camp and how all these teen girls at the time they were 15 or 14 enjoyed it, I thought, oh, maybe there is something there. Maybe they need to learn this. They don't know anything about deep breathing. They don't know about grounding. They don't know about, using their own resources to relax themselves. So I found it really important. I also, as we kind of discussed before, I live a mile from Stoneman Douglas High School, which is in Parkland. And when the mass shooting happened there, a great deal of trauma occurred to 14-year-olds because they were in 9th grade when this happened. And so I saw a lot of parents and children of that age in and out of our office. And that time we all decided to get trained in EMDR to help with PTSD. So it kind of stemmed from that occurrence, which of course affected the school, affected the community, and affected everyone for so long. And so that's what kind of brought it about. So of course with EMDR or with any kind of PTSD training, it doesn't wipe it out completely. It doesn't erase it like it never happened, but the goal is to get rid of the PTSD symptoms. So it's not affecting your life or causing you not to do things you want to do. So I think all of those things kind of played a part into working with 14, 15, 16-year-olds and adults.
So let's spend a few minutes talking about EMDR. I'm a fan, refer lots of people for EMDR. And it was super effective for my child who had a traumatic injury. He snapped off both bones in his leg in a freak accident on a trampoline. And then just developed this intense fear of dying from that whole ambulance ride, surgery, emergency type event that he went through. And EMDR was super effective. So talk to our listeners about what EMDR stands for, what it is, how it works, and when it would work. Like what's it useful for?
Yeah, so it's eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. And if I was in the office, I have these little things called tappers, and you hold one in one hand and one in the other hand, and they vibrate, causing a bilateral stimulation. A lot of practitioners use a light, which works the same. When I am doing telehealth, I do a bilateral stimulation where your right hand is on your left shoulder and your left hand is on your right shoulder, and you do a tapping motion. And I guess, thinking about it, it's a little similar to tapping, which is now something that people talk about too, but that's something else. Anyway, you tap using bilateral stimulation. And the idea is it's not really talk therapy. So it's not a lot of talking about the incident. It's focusing on I messages. I'm going to die, and changing that irrational thought to what you want to believe. And so it's a lot of within yourself thoughts, talking, what are you getting from that thought? What does that thought mean? And then reprocessing the brain to believe something different and believe something more accurate. And again, does it make the event disappear? No, but it makes the night sweats or the screaming or whatever it is, it abates that. So I've had some really good results with that as well, although nothing is for everyone. So not all people benefit from EMDR, but I think a lot of people do. And I think that's wonderful that your son was able to go through that and benefit from that.
Does there have to be a specific target, or can it be used with general anxiety?
I believe that it can, because yes, a school shooting or a horrific accident, that's incredibly traumatic, but that doesn't negate another person's trauma, whatever they felt their trauma was through childhood. So yes, it could be something like a school shooting, but it also could be with, familial incidences that cause trauma as well. I've also done something called RTM, which was dealing a lot with veterans. They seem to get a lot of results from that. And it's a similar concept, except you're replaying it as a movie. It's kind of hard to explain. You replay it as a movie, and you replay it in black and white, and you replay it backwards, and you replay it smaller, and then you actually pretend it's a movie, and you pretend it's far away. And there seem to be good results with that as well.
And what does RTM stand for?
Oh my gosh, I have to remember the acronym for that. Traumatic, you know what, I'll get back to you.
Okay. I'll look it up while you talk. How's that?
Yeah. I should know.
We put you on the spot.
Yeah,
it's good though. I just haven't heard that. So right away I'm thinking, yeah, what does that stand for?
Reconsolidation of traumatic memories.
Yes. Yeah. And I've actually used that with veterans, but also with drug addicts that have had serious things go on, and it's worked for them as well.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Right. And then if parents are looking for specific therapy for their child, what therapy do you recommend? What should they be looking for when they Google counselors in their area? What methodology do you recommend for anxiety? What should they look for?
I'm a big proponent for cognitive behavior therapy. And again, talk therapy, positive therapy, motivational interviewing, all those things are great. But for anxiety, cognitive behavior therapy, I think, seems to get the best results. And, some therapists give homework and things to do when they're not in the office to help with the anxiety. But I certainly would recommend cognitive behavior therapy. Of course, with young children, play, which of course I'm not in the office, and that's very specialized, to do play therapy where they have the sand table and the games and the toys. And for young ones, that's certainly best.
So I get a lot of parents who ask me, hey, my child has been in therapy for 6 months and I'm not seeing any improvement. So talk to us about at what point should a parent say, I'm not sure this is a good fit, or maybe I should try somebody else?
Well, and what I always say with my clients, you have to have the rapport with the client. You have to have that connection, and you're not going to have maybe a connection with everyone. And if your child or you are not feeling that connection, that's okay. And I think any therapist would understand you need to find someone that's suited for you. I think with a lot of people, with a lot of children, maybe it's almost like a safe space. So maybe you won't see progress at home, but this is a place for your child that they feel that they have freedom and comfort to kind of express their emotions with a person that's neutral and isn't someone from their family. And I also think with younger children to maybe include the family or include the mom or have family sessions and really kind of talk about what the goals are and what you're seeing and what you want to see. But again, if you're not happy or comfortable, it's okay. And maybe there would be somebody else out there that would be better.
I just want to back that up. I didn't mean parents of people that I counsel. I meant that they would say, should I stop or should I look elsewhere? Right. Because they just don't know what's happening in the counseling room. Right. So they're wondering, am I driving my kid, once a week for this and it's not helping?
Right.
Or whatever.
Because as parents, we're looking for those, outward sort of behavior changes, or we're looking to see their feelings be expressed in a more healthy way. We're looking for them to get out of bed and actually get back into life. And so if they're in therapy and we're not seeing those things change, that's probably a sign that maybe it's not a good fit.
I would think so. Or maybe talk about what your goals are. And are you seeing, a lot of therapists encourage the journaling or the waking up with gratitude. I mean, is the child doing the homework? Are they kind of comfortable with the therapist? Are they getting and yeah, I guess it would be time to revisit it for sure.
Okay.
So I want to talk specifically about social anxiety. I've noticed it can be super intractable, like really hard to overcome, really hard to treat, especially among teenage girls. So I know that COVID has exacerbated the social anxiety, right? I mean, you're stuck at home for a year and a half, and now all of a sudden you have to go back into the world. You've lost your social skills. You're all confused. But why are we seeing, besides COVID, why are we seeing so much social anxiety in teens, especially teen girls? And what do we do?
I mean, honestly, I think it's related to the social media. I mean, look what they're looking at. These girls they're all in bathing suits and all these places, and they're all edited, and they're looking at these images day in and day out, and they're scrolling so fast. And I think that it's really harmed teenage girls in a big way. But I've also seen in adults the social anxiety because of COVID, and they are concerned about getting out of the car and going to the grocery store, and it's an uncomfortable thing. Although there are others that had social anxiety and love the fact that they can wear a mask and wear glasses and cover themselves up and a hat, and they feel like they're invisible, and that's almost made it easier for them to go out and join the world. And for social anxiety, it's exposure therapy, which is so hard, but go out for 1 minute, try it for 2 minutes, and really getting out there and doing it, which is so incredibly hard. And we were stuck in the house for so long. It got easy, it got comfortable. And the truth is, now that the world's opening up and we need to go out again, it is really hard for these teens getting back into school, getting back into the routine. But exposure is the way to go, really.
Right. So to reiterate, the only way to overcome anxiety is to go through it.
Yes.
Mm.
Yeah.
Because I think as parents, our instinct is to protect our child from
Right.
suffering, right?
Mhm.
Oh, you're experiencing anxiety. Well, then don't go.
Right.
So we allay our anxiety by avoiding the thing that causes the anxiety, but then that just actually feeds it, right? That
Right.
avoidance.
Yes. And the truth is, what we worry about, what is a statistic? Like, I think it's almost like 99% of the things we worry about never even happen. So the teens and adults, you're spending so much time and energy worrying about the what ifs, and if this happens, I'll do this, and if this happens, I'll do that. And none of those things are going to happen. And you do have to put yourself out there and experience it to really realize that.
Yeah. And I think for all of us listening to this, that is really a hard thing, because I think if you tend to be the parent that's more, hovering and protecting your kids, then, okay, I'm going to use one of my kids as an example. He doesn't want to go out and do new things with friends. He's got 2 good friends that he does things with, and that's it. And he sort of complains about, I don't have any friends. I don't know how to make friends. I don't know how to talk to people. And so then I push him out into things like, we're going to go to youth group. You're going to go to youth group, and, you're going to experience this. And I know it's hard, but you're going to go. Well, that sort of hovering parent perspective, as he goes, I don't want to, and he's really sad, would be like, okay, never mind. It's okay. You can stay home, buddy. It's okay. And then I think there's the opposite. Then that super controlling parent would be like, you're going to do what I say, and you're going to like it. You're going to go, and you're going to put a smile on your face, right? Like 2 very, very opposite ends of the spectrum. Where is the happy middle? To talk to us about kind of finding that healthy middle space of pushing your child that suffers from social anxiety, pushing them out there, not hovering, not controlling.
It's so hard, and every child is so different, I know. But again, going with the statistics, so we have, 6,000 thoughts a day, and 80% of our thoughts are like faulty, not accurate, not right. And so I wonder if that's something to really explain to our kids. Okay, you're having this thought that you don't have any friends. Let's talk about that. Is that really true? Is that really an accurate thought? Well, you have Johnny, and you have Sally in youth group, and you have Joey on the soccer field, oh, wait, I do have friends. So almost challenging those thoughts for them. And I wonder if once they are sort of pushed a little to do youth group or whatever it is, if they ultimately really have a good time and they're happy that they've gone. I'm against that. Authoritarian parenting, of course, isn't good. You want them to be themselves, and but authoritative, maybe that little coercing and pushing really does benefit them in the long run.
Along with conversation is what I'm hearing you say.
Right. Connection.
Yeah. So we need to take a break and let Terry read a word from our sponsor, Learning RX. And when we come back, I want to talk about school shootings and that anxiety and fear that creates for families and kids, because that's a real fear.
Yeah.
Right. That is happening. So let's talk about that when we come back from the break.
Are you concerned about your child's reading or spelling performance? Are you worried your child's reading curriculum isn't thorough enough? Well, most learning struggles aren't the results of poor curriculum or instruction. They're typically caused by having cognitive skills that need to be strengthened. Skills like auditory processing, memory, and processing speed. Learning RX one-on-one brain training and structured literacy programs are designed to target and strengthen the skills that we rely on for reading, spelling, writing, and learning. Learning RX can help you identify which skills may be keeping your child from performing their best. The Learning RX team would like to help get your child on the path to a brighter and more confident future. Join the growing list of more than 100,000 children and adults trained at LearningRx. Give LearningRx a call at 866-BRAIN-01 or visit learningrx.com. That's learningrx.com.
And we're back talking to licensed mental health counselor Stacie Boyar about anxiety. So Stacie, you are uniquely qualified to talk about the anxiety and fear around school shootings because you're in Parkland, Florida, right down the road from where the Parkland shooting happened. So talk to us about how to address what parents are feeling, the fear about sending kids to school, and what kids are feeling about going to school. It's all over the media. Everyone knows. What do we do?
You're right. It used to be something that was abstract. When you'd have this fear, you could challenge those thoughts and say, well, yes, we see it on the news, but the likelihood of it happening by you is slim. Unfortunately, now I don't think we can say that anymore. And just talking with people around here, we, obviously knew people that were killed during the shooting in Parkland. And then a person also knows someone in the same area that was in the shooting just recently. So it's like to have people know of friends and family members that this has happened to in several locations is really mind-boggling and scary. And what can you do? I mean, it is just an overwhelming thing to even think about. When talking about anxiety and getting over it, I talk a lot about a container method. So we talked about grounding, we talked about breathing, a container, or not even the container. Yes, but the safe space, having your own safe space. So a visualization technique that sometimes helps with anxiety is having children or adults or teens visualize the most beautiful place that they ever dreamed of, whether they saw it on the internet or they've actually been to it, and using again their five senses to get them there. So if it's the beach, what do you hear? What do you see? What do you smell? You could make it as beautiful and as wonderful and as vibrant as you want because it's your safe space. So, as much as we don't want to have our children go out into this scary world, maybe we can give them the tools to relax themselves and make them feel good when they are there. But it is a scary, scary time.
Yeah. Well, you've got a tool that I think is probably would be really, really helpful to all of us, to teen girls, teen kids, dealing with that daily anxiety, that thing that comes up, whether it's social anxiety, fear of being out in public, all the shootings and the violence out in the world right now. Tell us a little bit about that tool you've got available for your podcast.
Oh, yes. Thank you. So it's called Mama Stacie, and on it isn't an interview podcast. It just offers tips and techniques to help with anxiety, which some of the ones we talked about are on there, and a million others, taming your dragon and safe space and building your container and different kind of breathing techniques that are really, really helpful for people when they are struggling, and for anybody. I think it's a really important thing to have in your toolbox. It is important for each and every one of us to have a toolbox that works for us, and everyone's toolbox might be different. Having something to hold on to. A lot of children, I've given them the tip to put something in their backpack or their purse or their pocket that they can feel and they can touch, whether it's a crystal or a rock or a toy. And when you're feeling anxious, put your hand in your pocket or your backpack and touch it, and try to just focus on that and nothing else that's going on. Is it cold? Is it sharp? Is it prickly? Is it cool? Is it warm? And put all your focus on that particular item. So yeah, there's tons and tons of tricks to keep our mind away from things that are difficult and put them in a safe, happy place.
Will you spell that for us, for our listeners, so that after they listen to this podcast, they can click over and listen to one of your soothing podcast anti-anxiety episodes?
Yeah, Nama Stacie, Namastacie, with little prayer hands at the end. And there's about 20 kind of tips to help with anxiety.
Okay.
Yeah, each episode is like 4 to 10 minutes at the most, right? Where you do guided activities, like those guided mindfulness techniques or calming techniques. It's a fascinating resource and free, right? Like it's like having Stacie right there in your ears, guiding you through these calming exercises. So in thinking about the way that we help children and adults get past anxiety by saying, what are the chances of this happening? What is the worst thing that can happen? What is the most likely thing that can happen? When we talk about the violence that we're seeing in the world right now, it's scary to leave one's house and say, if I go to the mall, am I going to be shot? If I go to school, am I going to be shot? If I go to the movie theater, right?
A block party.
The block party, right. If I sit outside at a restaurant, will a drive-by shooting happen to me? Those are real things that are happening. And if we can't necessarily say what's the most likely thing that could occur, right? Or what's the worst that can happen in that scenario? Well, the worst that can happen is we get shot. So do we want to teach our kids tangible tools, not just the calming escape methods, but like our bodies are designed to have this fight or flight response, right? To help us get away or help us. I mean, do we remind them of what they can physically do and how they're equipped for that? Or does that just make the anxiety worse?
Gosh, yeah, that's such an interesting question. Yeah.
Well, I mean, I think having them realize that they do have the strength and the capability is an important thing, and giving them the confidence is so important. Although, then you think about the schools. When we were younger, we had fire drills or whatever, and I'm sure they still do. And now they're having shooter drills. And you wonder, what is that doing to them? Although maybe it is making hopefully all children feel confident. Like, if this happens, I can physically do this. It's heartbreaking to even think about it and go there and say that. But okay, I can put my desk this way. I can put my backpack here. So perhaps that gives them the tangible thoughts and tools to get through.
Yeah.
I know it's tough, right? I can't remember her name, but I saw a psychologist do a TED talk, and she specializes in school shootings and school shooting research. And she said, we have to stop doing shooting drills because we're telling the shooters what's going to happen.
Oh my goodness.
Because something like 80% are students, current students or former students in that school. So they know exactly what the process is going to be. Yeah. So that was an interesting perspective as well, right? Like you want the kids to know, here's how we can protect ourselves. But at the same time, you're teaching the shooters exactly what the kids are going to be doing and where they're going to be hiding and how they're going to be hiding.
You still got to think that still is helpful. There's still protective measures. It's still better than kids running around in chaos. I mean, some of the incidents that happened many, many years ago, and that was the scenario. There were kids running around in chaos, and there was so much more destruction. So I don't know. I tend to think, hey, let's still, create safety plans.
Well, and I guess that they have installed better security systems or glass that can't be broken through. I mean, I think some measures have been put in place, which are positive, but it's an awful thing.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And it's a terrifying statistic in this country that those kind of mass shootings. Why? I don't know, but it is scary. That anxiety is real. It's not just in our heads as parents, not just kids, our heads as parents. And we as parents have that anxiety too. I mean, I think we've been saying a lot about, hey, these are things you could let your kids listen to. No, you know what? As a mom, I need to deal with my anxiety because it is very real. That I'm scared sometimes to let my kids go out into public places,
Yeah, and I find myself and probably a lot of people, you kind of look for the exits now, which is nothing that I really had ever done before. Like, okay, and if I need to get out of here, I can go that way. And that's, an awful thing that you have to think about now. But again, that puts the power, maybe we feel then we have the power to do something if God forbid something happens.
It's like it's both, right? Like, let's know where the exits are. Let's know the safety plan. And so that we can still go out into that public scenario, the concert, the high school event, the airport, the whatever, so that we still can go out let's also learn the self-soothing, anxiety calming methods so that we've got both things working together. Do you think that's on target?
Absolutely. Yeah. Interestingly enough, I had one client that during the mass shooting in Parkland, and there's so many stories of children because it's a huge high school, they were all kind of shoved in a closet, which I think they still do is one of the things. So it's the entire classroom, whatever it was, 25 kids in a closet. And so this one girl was kind of crushed in the closet, and she got out, thankfully. And now, months and months later, maybe even a year later, she went on a field trip and there was a fire alarm at the hotel. So at the Parkland shooting, a fire alarm ironically went off before the shooting. And then the shooter actually pulled the fire alarm. So a lot of noises even before it actually happened. So now she's on a field trip at a hotel, and the fire alarm goes off at the hotel, and she experiences this horrible numbing in her arm. And the whole weekend, just such pain in her arm. And what happened was we came to the realization through EMDR actually, and after that she was in this closet crushed. There were kids sitting on her arm, pushing on her arm. So now when she heard this fire alarm for the first time since then, she had this sensation in her arm again. And we kind of worked through that and got rid of that. But what these kids are experiencing, they don't understand. And it's so layered. But you're right, having the tools and the strength to know I can go into the closet, I can do this, I can do the deep breathing, I can do the grounding. I have a huge toolbox of things that I can do. Hopefully puts their mind at ease a bit.
Sure. And when you look at the number of days that kids go to school and the number of schools that are in the country, the chances of it happening are still slim, right? I mean, we hear it because it's so tragic when we hear it, but we can still use those statistics as part of that evidence against the daily fear, right? That can it happen? Yes. The likelihood of it happening is low, but here's what you can do.
Yeah, yes, exactly. Mm-hmm.
All right.
All righty.
Stacie, is there anything that you still want to share with our listeners that you haven't gotten to share today?
Well, thank you again so much for having me. You can join me on Stacie, the podcast, and You're Not the Boss of Me, geared for teens and working through anxiety, which is a workbook, a journal, a manual with some little stories in it too. Might be something else your teen can put in their toolbox to help them. But again, thank you so much for having me. It was such a pleasure.
Oh, we're so glad that you were with us today. You just shared some actionable tips that our listeners can take away to help their kids and themselves even, right? So we appreciate your insights and your wisdom today. If you'd like more information, listeners, about Stacie, her website is namastacie.com, NAMASTACIE.com. You can find her on Facebook at Stacie Boyar Therapy and on Instagram at namastacie_Boyar. And we will put those links and her handles in the show notes, as well as a link to find her book on Amazon. So thank you so much for listening today. If you liked our show, we would love it if you would leave us a 5-star rating and review on Apple Podcasts. If you would rather watch us, we're on YouTube. And you can find us on every social media channel at The Brainy Moms. We'd like to thank our sponsor today, Learning RX. Look, we know that you're busy moms and we're busy moms, so we're out.
See ya.